Jonas Vingegaard, our beloved Danish anchovy, assured his fans at the end of last season, in the middle of changing diapers, that they shouldn't worry. It was true he had used the popular devices to inhale carbon monoxide to improve his performance, but there was nothing to worry about. Nothing at all. It was as simple as smoking a cigarette. Now today, your favourite cycling uncle will assure you that the former fish cleaner is lying, whether consciously or not. But you do have to wonder how you can trust someone who's been missing for weeks in the purest Danish tradition, and a man about whom we only glean scraps of news thanks to a legendary doper like Il Biondo Rolf Sorensen. Do you want to know why these carbon monoxide devices could have been used for a totally different purpose? Make sure you stay tuned until the end of the video to find out. And don't forget you can follow us on our X account, @UncleCycling. And now, without further ado, let the show begin. Now, studies on performance enhancement with carbon monoxide in cycling have been around for decades. Even Aldo Sassi, legendary trainer of the most monstrous cyclist in history, Berillo, he used them in 2008 as head of the MAPE Centre, discovering that their use meant a 4% increase in hemoglobin mass, leading to clear improvements in performance, which was totally legal. However, it was not until 2024, in the middle of the Tour de France, that the media outlet Escape Collective showed the general public how widespread the use of these devices was, at least in 3 of the richest teams in the World Tour: Visma Lease Bike, UAE Team Emirates, and the Israel Premier Tech. They'd all use these carbon monoxide devices, each in their own way, to improve the performance of their cyclists at high altitude. Now, coaches from these teams spoke openly about the use of carbon monoxide by riders such as the Slovenian alien Tadej Pogačar, the Danish rider Jonas Vingegaard, the top 2 finishers in the Tour de France in the last 4 years, to name but 2. Now, fellow professionals, such as Romain Bardet, cried foul when they saw relatively unknown cyclists such as the Canadian Derek G go from winning minor races in North America to winning major races in Europe after inhaling carbon monoxide. It was a spectacle that ultimately led to their ban in early 2025. According to all the experts in the world, these were not indicative of doping. So why ban them? Can you imagine the UCI or WADA banning energy bars or toast with olive oil? Of course not. Fortunately, an expert in these devices, a creator of these devices, in fact, has come forward to tell us the truth. And yes, he is Danish, because it's always a Dane. Carsten Lundby, he's a professor in the Department of Sports Science and Biomechanics at the University of Zurich, an expert in physiology with many years of experience and more than 200 articles published in various scientific journals. But in addition to this, he's also the CEO of the medtech company Detalo Health, where he demonstrates his ability to analyze blood volume with one of his own patented devices. And that's not all. In 2012, in a study conducted with professional cyclists, Lundby demonstrated that blood transfusions and EPO injections were completely undetectable in the anti-doping tests of the time, as long as you prepared specific schedules for the athletes, so that traces of EPO would disappear from their blood and urine samples. Now, since then, he has been trying to develop a reliable anti-doping method for which he has ideas and, of course, the will to succeed, but he lacks the money to develop it. However, he has been able to develop one of these carbon monoxide devices, and his own experience with cyclists has been absolutely amazing. The Dutch podcast De Wieler Redactie on National Public Television recently conducted an analysis of new performance-enhancing techniques with legendary cyclists such as the Giro d'Italia winner Tom Dumoulin and the Giro, Tour, Vuelta, Olympic and World Champion Annemiek van Vleuten. When discussing carbon monoxide devices, they decided to bring in Professor Carsten Lundby, who explained candidly how cyclists have been using these devices in recent years without the UCI or other authorities knowing. Lundby told the Dutch that he can see if someone is using these carbon monoxide devices he created because of his database. Now, although no team bought his $48,000 machine, individual cyclists and teams were willing to try it out with him. This did not surprise me at first, as Machin, the popular director of the UAE Team Emirates, told Uncle Cycling that during 2024 they had tested the devices thanks to an offer from the University of Zaragoza by the expert Dr. Irina Zelenkova. She accompanied the Emirati team to a high-altitude training camp during the last season. This expert even added how she'd used the test with Pogacar and other UAE Emirates riders. For 2 minutes, the cyclist inhales carbon monoxide. Zelenkova then takes blood samples from a finger prick for 6 minutes. This allows her to extract a lot of useful information to measure hemoglobin, but Zelenkova did not reveal everything behind this. Now, returning to Carsten Lundby, I was surprised by the list of teams involved in the use of his carbon monoxide devices, as there were some that had not been mentioned in the Escape Collective article. We're talking about the always dangerous Norwegians from Uno X, who, according to Lundby, often came to see him to test the devices. And there was, of course, the well-known Israel Premier Tech and Visma Lease Bike. Plus some cyclists from Lotto and Quickstep who went to see him in Denmark to inhale carbon monoxide. And then, of course, there was Jonas Vingegaard, possibly one of Lundby's best customers. However, in something of a contrast to Jonas, the Danish professor explained that no, inhaling carbon monoxide is not the same as smoking cigarettes, especially if these devices are abused. Lundby claimed that if carbon monoxide is inhaled 4 or 5 times a day over a period of 3 or 4 weeks, the increase in hemoglobin could be mind-boggling. Now, apart from cheaters using old-school methods, this carbon monoxide method greatly benefits cyclists who do a lot of altitude training. And the most amazing thing is that it is currently undetectable in anti-doping tests. Now, cyclists' blood should be tested very often. Even then, they could argue that their hemoglobin increase is caused by smoking or by the exhaust fumes from the vehicles they train with. And of course, the professor assures us that none of these cyclists have abused his method with him and his machines. But he's also clear that there are cyclists who have been able to do so in other ways. Carsten Lundby claims that although his devices increase the cyclist's hemoglobin by around 5%, this is reduced by half after 2 or 3 hours. However, smoking cigarettes can actually increase hemoglobin by between 6 and 8%. And if you live in a city like Beijing, a veritable paradise for toxic gases, your hemoglobin is already artificially increased by 2.5%. In other words, if you want to abuse carbon monoxide, you can do so without trying Lundby's device. Simply put it in a bag, like the classic blood bag, and then the cyclist can fly. Fortunately, WADA is working on new rules and a time-based method to try to detect the abuse of these carbon monoxide devices and this type of abuse in general. That's why carbon monoxide devices have been banned. That's the real reason, not the cost or ethics or the endless complaints from Romain Bardet. Now, this great news could be announced in September 2025 and would be in place for the new season from January 2026. Now, of course, I cannot say for sure that Jonas Vingegaard has abused Lundby's devices, but I can say now that using them is not the same as smoking cigarettes, and that the problem is not the devices themselves, but rather carbon monoxide and its abuse in a bid to increase hemoglobin. That sounds like doping.